to verse 5, and it said, and the waters receded continually until the 10th month. Can we go back for a minute? Look at verse 4. It was in the 7th month that the ark rested and got its footing. Verse 5, it was in the 10th month that the waters decreased continually. In the 3 months after God allowed the ark to rest, 3 months later, the water continually to decrease. And then you go down to verse 5. And the waters decreased continually until the 10th month. And in the 10th month of the first day of the month, were the tops of the mountains seen. We got to stop there for a moment. After 10 months being inside of that boat, and they couldn't see nothing but water. And in the 10th month was the top of the mountain seen. And I just underlined in my Bible seen, because see, they was looking for land. They were looking for a place to set their feet. And God allowed them to see the place, but they still couldn't get to it. They was in a holding place, and they couldn't get to where they wanted to be. And sometimes God will allow us to see our end coming, but we can't get to it until he allows us to get there. They could see the top of the mountains that gave them hope, but God still had them in a holding place. And God had them in a holding place after the storm. When the storm was over, he still had them in a holding place. It's just like this in our life. Sometimes God have us going through a storm, and that storm seems like it continue on and on and on and on. And then when he let the storm stop raging, that don't mean that God is going to turn us loose from where he have us. He'll give us rest from the storm, but he won't let us walk on dry ground. In other words, what I'm saying tonight, sometimes God will give us rest for the storm, but he won't allow us to walk in what he has for us. He still has us in a holding place where the storms have ceased, but the destruction of the storm is still all around us. And God allowed them again in verse 5, and the waters decreased continually until the 10th month, and the 10th month of the first day of the month were the top of the mountain seen. And they could see what they had been looking for. But at this point, they couldn't get to it. And I keep going over this because I got to go down to verse 6, and it's going to make it plain. And it came to pass at the end of 40 days that Noah opened the window of the ark which he had made. Now, 40 more days, Noah goes up and opens the window that was in the top of the ark. And look what Noah does after he had opened that window. In verse 7, and he sent forth a raven, which went forth to and fro until the waters were dried up from off the earth. He sent a raven that would go to and fro, looking for a place to rest, looking for a place to set his feet. But when I got down to verse 8, it said, also he sent forth a dove from him to see if the waters were abated from off the face of the ground. But the dove found no rest for the sole of his feet. The dove would go out and he would look for a dry place. He would look for something that he could land on. And he couldn't find anything to land on because the water was still there. It was just a seat in itself. It was a basin itself. It was still leaving. But when you get down to verse 9, it said, but the dove found no rest for the sole of her foot. That means that water was still everywhere. And she returned unto him unto the ark, for the water was on the face of the whole earth. Even though the water was abating, they could see the peaks of the mountains, but it had not abated enough for them to leave the ark. And a lot of times when we see that God is bringing us out, we be in a hurry to get to where the point we want to be. But God brought them out slowly. He can let them see that things were changing. that forgiveness was taking place, but he still had them in a holding place. And some of us tonight, we can see our blessings on the way. We can see that things is easing off and the favor of God is coming back, but he's still not allowing us to walk in it like we want to walk in it. Why? Because God said things is not in man's time, but it's in my time. Things is in God's time. Went down to verse 9 again. And it said, but the dove found no rest for the sole of her foot. And she returned unto him unto the ark, for the water was on the face of the whole earth. Then he put forth his hand and took her and pulled her into the ark. He reached out to one of, this was a small one. My Bible said about a foot and a half width of this window, a very small window. It wasn't no big window, picture window like we can look out. And when you think about that, the only window that was in the ark was at the very top of the ark. When any windows anywhere else, they couldn't see out. Y'all know how now you can get on a ship, travel all over the world, and in your room, you got a window that you can look out and see the ocean and see where you're going. They couldn't see where they were going, but God knew where he was taking them. And a lot of times when we're in a storm, when God has us in a holding place, we can't see where we're going, but we know that we got to trust God to get us wherever he wants us to be. And they had to trust God for it because they couldn't see where they were going. And then in verse 10, it said, and he stayed yet another 7 days. He kept the dove with him another 7 days. Now, after he sent the dove out, dove came back, brought bad news. Why I said bad news? Because he didn't have nothing that Noah was looking for. Noah was looking for anything that would tell him that it was over, that God had receded all of the water and the earth would be like it was before. And then when I got down to verse 11, it said, and the dove came into him, with verse 10, and he stayed yet another 7 days, and again he sent forth the dove out of the ark. He said, let me try it again. Sometimes we got to understand, just because when we send things out and we try to put stuff in place to get our footing again, and it ain't happened, we hadn't seen it yet. Don't give up on God. The Bible says here, Noah did it again another 7 days. And we know the number 7 is what God's work. It's God's complete number. In 7 days, Noah said, let me try God again. I went today and I tried God, but I didn't get good news. But Noah didn't give up. 7 days, which is God's day. He did it again and he sent it out. And then on that 7th day, in verse 11, and the dove came unto him in the evening, and lo, in her mouth was an olive leaf, plucked off. And I sure enough had to stop there. So Noah knew that the waters was abated from off the earth. Olive leaf, or olive, all the things that the dove could have brought back. God allowed the dove to go and find this olive leaf and pluck it off and bring it back to Noah. And we know that an olive leaf or olive branch is a symbol of peace. And God is letting them know this was no mistake what the dove brought back. It was intentional by God to let Noah know that now you're going to find peace. To let Noah know God is satisfied with the destruction, with the punishment that he had put upon the earth. And God said now it will be a time of peace between God and man. God gave Noah the symbol. Dove brought it back to him of olive branch. Then when you get to verse 12, and he stayed yet another time, we'll go back to verse 13. And it came to pass in the 601st year, in the first month of the day of the month, the waters was dried up from off the earth. And Noah removed the covering of the ark and looked, and behold, the face of the ground was dry. Now here it is. God allowed a time to come that Noah and his family could lower the door after waiting on God. And how many know we have to wait on God until God tells us that it's over? But not only tells us that it's over, but God tells us now, I'm going to give you a brand new start. And don't you know when God gives mankind a brand new start, he is expecting something great from man. He is expecting for man to have changed from what he was doing to what God would have him to do. And even God punishes us now, and we be, Lord, if you give me one more chance, Lord, whenever this is going to be over, I promise you that I'm going to do right by you. Y'all know how we do sometimes. When God punishes us, and we know it's God that's punishing us. And Lord, if you give me another chance, I promise you I'm going to get it right this time. I went down to verse 14, after Noah had removed the covering off the ark. In other words, he lowered the door and looked, and behold, the face of the earth was dry. In verse 14, and in the second month, even the 17th day of, even the 20th day of the month, was the earth dry. They had been in the ark at this point 378 days, over a year from the time that God caused the flood, the door to be closed, when God shut the door on them, and it started the rain to fall. 378 days they had been in the ark. Now, somebody said, "Pastor, that's a long time, but you can't see where you're going. That's a long time when you just floating and you don't know where you're going to end up. That's a long time when you got to trust a higher power to get you to dry ground again." But sometimes God will allow us not only to go 378 days, God will allow us to go some years before we get our footing back. He'll let us go through some turmoil that when we do get our footing back, we'll be more appreciative. Lord, I'm so glad I'm on dry ground again. Lord, I'm so glad that you're stabilizing my life. And I can see your hand in my business. I can see your hand in my prosperity. I can see your hand, God. And what God wants us to understand, that even when he allowed destruction to come, he didn't let destruction stay there forever. After the time was over, that he decided how long it needed to be. Watch what God is getting ready to do now. We went down to verse 15. And God spake unto Noah, saying, now the Bible does not say from chapter 7 all the way over to chapter 8 and verse 15, once God had closed the door, that God spoke to Noah during that time. It does not tell us, we do not know, but the Bible does not mention that God speaks to Noah once he put Noah in the ark and the animals and shut the door. It does not tell us that God had a conversation with Noah. You got to sure enough know when you're going through and hadn't heard from God, that God is still God and that he's a merciful God. Verse 15, and God spake unto Noah, saying, go forth for the ark, thou and thy wife and thy sons and the sons' wives with thee, and bring forth with thee every living thing that is with thee. And God said, you step out and bring everything that liveth with you. Bring forth with thee every living thing that is with thee of all flesh, both of fowl of the air, cattle, and every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth, that they may breed abundantly. God is letting them know we finna repopulate the earth. He's finna repopulate the earth, that they may breed abundantly in the earth and be beautiful. And be fruitful and multiply upon the earth. God takes time to replenish the earth. Gave them a brand new start. Ain't that something? After all of that they went through, and the time they waited on God, God gave them a brand new start. And God is still giving brand new starts today. I don't know about anybody else's own Bible study tonight, but I can hold up both hands and say that God has given me a brand new start. And I remember the day that he gave it to me. And God is wanting us, when you get a brand new start, to walk with him, not against him, to trust him and to obey him. And then God said that, let me know that I can count on you. Because what? I have given you a brand new start. Went down to verse 18, and it said, and Noah went forth. Watch this tonight. And Noah went forth in his sons, and his wife, and his son's wife with him. And every beast, every creeping thing, every fowl, and whatsoever creepeth upon the earth after their kind went forth out of the ark. Moved out of the holding place that God had them in. Anybody tonight have been able to move out of the holding place that God have had you in? You know you was in a holding place. You was trying to get the stuff and couldn't get it. And then when the door came down, when the door opened up, you know it had to be God that let you out of there. You know it had to be God that turned you loose from what you were suffering with. And when they walked out of there, I went down to verse 18, if you will. I mean, verse 20. And look what it says here. Look what Noah do after God turns him loose in his family. The Bible said here in verse 20, and Noah built an ark unto the Lord, an altar unto the Lord. What is Noah doing? The first thing he do when he get out of that ark, the very first thing he does is he build an altar unto God. To do what? To worship God. And Noah knew that if God could bring me through that, he's a God that need to be worshiped. And the Bible said here in verse 20, and Noah built an altar unto the Lord. Before he did anything else, when he got out of trouble, Noah built the ark and he worshiped God. Built an altar and he worshiped God. And took of every clean beast and of every clean fowl and offered burnt offerings on the altar. Then verse 21. And the Lord smelled a sweet savor. And the Lord said in his heart, I will not again curse the ground anymore for man's sake. Can we stop there tonight? Noah's praise to God and his worship to God. It was like a sweet aroma in the air. And God smelled his praise. And when God smelled his praise, look what God said. And the Lord smelled a sweet savor, and the Lord said in his heart, I will not again curse the ground anymore. He said, Noah, man, what you have done today made me say, caused me to say that I will never curse the ground anymore for man's sake. Because look, the ground had to suffer. And everything else that was in the ground suffered because of the sin of men. And God said, I'm not going to allow anything else in creation that I have created to suffer because of man's sin. Verse 21, let's read it again. And the Lord smelled a sweet savior, and the Lord said in his heart, I will not again curse the ground anymore for man's sake. For the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth, neither will I again spite anymore everything living because of man's sin. God set an ordinance here. He promised man that he would never destroy everything living because of man's sin. In verse 22, while the earth remaineth, seed time and harvest, and cold and heat and summer and winter, and day and night shall not cease. Let's stop there for a moment. While the earth remaineth, seed time and harvest, cold and heat. Look at God, he's establishing the seasons of the years. He's establishing winter from summer, summer from winter. He's establishing night from the day. Should not cease from here on out. Then when you look at that altar, a place for continued worship. Noah didn't just build a little something that for right then. Noah built an altar for continued worship, not just to worship God one time and then continue on to go and do whatever he wanted to do. But Noah built an ark that he can go to God continually and worship God. And God wants us to have a place in our life that we can come to him continually to worship him and to thank him and to love him. For God, it is you that is blessing us and not we ourselves. And because Noah knew that, that's why his praise to God was sweet. Because God could see Noah's heart and knew that Noah's praise was righteous with God. His praise was honest with God. He was mighty grateful that his feet touched the ground again. And he got a chance to live out his days in the blessedness of God. And I said I wasn't going to go any further tonight, but we got just a couple more minutes. Let me say this in chapter 9, and we'll leave it alone. God's covenant with Noah. Look at this. He tells Noah in the way that he should live. God is not a God that is not instructional. God is an instructional God. And he's not going to let us go without an understanding as to how we should live according to his will. After Noah got through praising God, then look what God gives. God gives Noah a covenant. And God blessed Noah and his sons and said unto them, be fruitful, multiply, and replenish the earth. He told them what to do. And then look what he said in verse 2. And the fear of you and the dread of you shall be upon every beast of the earth. Look how God is getting ready to bless man and give him authority again over God's creation. He gave it to Adam and Eve, and they messed it up. Now God is starting all over again, and with Noah, he's giving him authority. Verse 2, and the fear of you and the dread of you shall be upon every beast of the earth, upon every fowl of the air, upon all the upon all that moveth upon the earth, and upon all the fish of the sea. Into your hands are they delivered. Ain't that something? When God forgive you, he forgive you. He don't hold it against us once he has forgiven us. And then he'll turn around and give us power and authority back over what he has made and what he has given man to be able to live. And here he is establishing man over everything again. The fowl of the air, the beasts of the field, and everything that moved up on the earth. And then I got to get to this part and we'll be finished tonight. The second part of verse 2, the last part of verse 2, into your hands are they delivered. But look at verse 3. Every moving thing that liveth shall be meat for you. God said, I'm going to allow you to take of the animals that I created that you may live, that you may feast on. Every moving thing that liveth shall be meat for you. But watch this. God also give more instructions here. Even as the green herbs have I given you all things. Not only meat, but vegetables, fruit, all these things that God created. God is saying, I'm giving them to you again. Verse 4. Now here comes the stipulation. But flesh with the life thereof, which the blood thereof should not ye eat. Okay? Come on over, turn the page. And surely your blood of your lives will I require. At the hands of every beast will I require it, and at the hands of man, at the hands of every man's brother will I require the life of man. God lets us know that we have an ordinance from him as to how we should live with him, but also how we live with mankind. And when we think about this, there's even a passage, well, we out of time tonight, but as you will, write this down, read it later, the book of Leviticus, chapter 11, verse 1 through 23. And that's the book of Leviticus, chapter 11, verse 1 through 23. And it gets even deeper into that as to how man should be governed. And we thank God tonight. Our time is ran out. Let's see what time. Okay, our time is ran out. But if you will, just real quick, give me 2 minutes. If you will, real quick, come to Revelations 21. Very important. Revelations 21. Revelation chapter 21. And it tells us, and I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth was passed away, and there was no more sea. And I, John, saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down from God out of heaven. Now the earth already have been destroyed once by the water, by flood, where it was inhabitable. God destroyed it that way. But now in the book of Revelation, the earth will be destroyed again. And it said, I, John, Revelation chapter 21, I saw a new heaven and a new earth. The first heaven and the first earth will pass away, and there was no more sea. And I, John, saw the holy city of Jerusalem coming down from God out of heaven, prepared for a bride for her husband. We're going to put a pin on that tonight. And next week, we're going to come back to the book of Revelation, and we're going to see what the correlation is between Genesis chapter 9 and verse 3, and then Revelation chapter 21 and on down. So next week we'll dive into that. If we will, we can go ahead and turn our mics back on. We have something special tonight. We want to share with you, and I'm going to ask Mother Banks, if you will, to come on and share that, which you shared with me earlier today, and I thought it was wonderful.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
We know that today is International Women's Month, so I have something that was sent to me by my cousin that I'm sharing with you. It says, women, women, women. Every woman has walked with God, who has walked with God, has a story to tell you. Sarah will tell you, nothing is too difficult for God. Hagar will tell you, even in the desert, God is there. Rahab will tell you, God can use anyone. Hannah will tell you, my God answers prayers. Ruth will tell you, it's not over until God says it's over. Esther will tell you, God is able to transform an unworthy into a noble. Elizabeth will tell you, even in the age of advanced, you will give birth to a great man. Mary will tell you, it will be done to you according to the word of God. The woman with the issue of blood will tell you, when all has failed, God never fails. Mary and Martha will tell you, dead things can come back to life. Dorcas will tell you, God never forgets what we do for others. And Eunice will tell you it's never in vain to pray for our children. Dear woman, it's a great pleasure walking with God. It pays a lot. So walk with God so that you can tell your own story. God bless you.
Yes, Lord. Thank you, Mother Banks.